Hello, Taurus. Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another reading. As always, thank you for being here, thank you for your support, and thank you for sharing your energy with this space. This is a general reading, so take what feels right for you and leave the rest behind. Okay, Taurus. The moment I started connecting with your energy, I got this feeling that someone has been doing a lot more reflecting than they're letting on. Someone may be looking at the past very differently now. Someone may be starting to understand the value of something they once thought would always be there. So let's take a look and see what your cards have to say. Wow, Taurus, this energy feels quiet, not silent, but quiet in the way someone becomes quiet when they're finally forced to sit with their own thoughts. You know what I mean? There are moments in life when distractions stop working, the noise fades, the excuses lose their power, and suddenly all that's left is the truth. The first card catching my attention here is the Five of Cups card. And honestly, the feeling I'm getting from this isn't dramatic. It doesn't feel like someone throwing themselves on the floor crying. It feels heavier than that. It feels like regret that arrives late. The kind that sneaks into someone's mind when they're driving home alone. The kind that appears when they're staring at the ceiling and nobody is around to distract them. Because I keep feeling like this person is replaying things. Conversations, memories. Small moments they never thought twice about at the time. And that's what's standing out the most. It wasn't some huge event that changed everything. It was the little things. The way you checked on them. The way you listened. The way you stayed patient when maybe other people wouldn't have. Ooh, Taurus. I don't think this person understood how rare that was when they had it. That's what keeps coming through. They thought it would always be there. They thought they would always have more time, more opportunities, more chances to say what they meant. More chances to show up differently. But life has a funny way of making people recognize value, only after distance enters the picture. And as I'm saying this, the Six of Cups card is sitting here, almost like a photograph somebody can't stop looking at. It's strange, because I don't feel this person is only missing you. I feel like they're missing a version of themselves that existed when you were around. There was something about your presence that felt familiar to them, comfortable, safe, not perfect, not without challenges, but familiar. Like coming home after a long day. Like knowing someone genuinely cared whether you were okay. And honestly, Taurus, I think that's part of what's hitting them now. They've been comparing. Maybe not consciously, maybe not intentionally, but comparing nonetheless. People come and go, experiences come and go. Yet something keeps bringing their thoughts back here, back to you, back to this connection, back to the things they overlooked. Okay, I want to say something because the Hierophant card is showing up here and it's pulling my attention immediately. There was something steady about what you offered, something reliable, something mature. You weren't just another passing interaction. You weren't just filling space in someone's life. Whether they admitted it or not, there was substance here. There was consistency. And I think that's part of the realization happening. Because sometimes people spend so much time chasing excitement that they fail to recognize the value of stability. Sometimes they mistake consistency for something ordinary, until one day it's gone. And then they discover how difficult it is to replace. I keep hearing this energy saying, I thought there would be another chance. Not necessarily out loud, not necessarily in words, but that's the feeling. A person looking backward and realizing they assumed there would always be another opportunity, another conversation, another beginning, another day. And honestly, that realization doesn't feel comfortable. The Judgment card is here too. And wow, this feels like one of those moments where somebody can no longer avoid what they're feeling. It's almost as if memories they've pushed aside keep finding their way back. Little reminders, random thoughts, unexpected emotions. And each one seems to be asking the same question. Did I truly appreciate what I had? Did I really understand what this connection meant to me? Or was I too distracted to see it? Because Taurus, the energy feels reflective, deeply reflective. I don't feel someone blaming you. I don't feel someone focusing on what you did wrong. I feel someone looking inward. And that's very different. It's easier to point fingers. It's harder to sit with yourself and admit that maybe something valuable slipped through your hands because you assumed it would always remain there. And the more I sit with this energy, the more I feel this growing awareness. Not panic, not desperation, just awareness. A slow realizations spreading through somebody's heart. The realization that genuine people are rare, patient people are rare, loyal people are rare. And when someone encounters that kind of energy, it isn't always obvious how precious it is until later, much later. Honestly, Taurus, I feel like this person is still sorting through these emotions. They're still trying to understand everything they're feeling. Because what started as a simple memory seems to be turning into something much bigger. And the deeper they look, the the more there appears to be beneath the surface. Honestly, Taurus, something else is standing out here. The more I sit with this energy, the less it feels like this person is afraid of losing control, and the more it feels like they're afraid of becoming irrelevant in your life. Because there's a difference. One comes from ego, the other comes from realizing someone important may no longer be waiting in the same place they left them. And wow, Nine of Pentacles card is coming through immediately. What strikes me isn't what you're doing, it's the way you're doing it. You're not chasing, you're not forcing, you're not trying to prove anything. The energy feels calm, almost peaceful, like someone who spent a long time carrying emotional weight and eventually decided to put it down. Not because they stopped caring, not because they stopped feeling, but because life kept moving and they had to move with it. You know, sometimes people expect heartbreak to look dramatic. They expect tears, phone calls, late-night messages, big emotional reactions. But this feels different. This feels like someone waking up one day and slowly building a life that no longer revolves around the person who hurt them. And that can be far more unsettling to witness. Because I keep feeling this person looking at you and thinking, how are they okay? How are they moving forward? How are they finding peace without me? And maybe you don't even realize you're giving off that impression. Maybe you're still processing your own emotions privately. Maybe you still have moments where memories sneak up on you. But from where they're standing, Taurus, something about your energy feels stronger, more grounded, less available. The Queen of Pentacles card is sitting here, and honestly, I love the feeling of this card in your reading. Because it doesn't feel flashy. It doesn't feel loud. It feels like somebody tending to their own life, taking care of their responsibilities, protecting their peace, focusing on what truly matters. And what's interesting is that this person seems to notice every little change, not just the obvious things. Not just your appearance, not just what you're posting. They're noticing the energy behind it. They're noticing that you're no longer reaching for them emotionally. They're noticing that your attention is going elsewhere. Your priorities are shifting. Your world is expanding. And there's something about that which makes them incredibly uncomfortable. Not because they want you to suffer, not because they want you stuck, but because a part of them assumed there would always be time. There would always be another chance. There would always be another opportunity to revisit this connection whenever they felt ready. Okay, let's talk about this death card because, wow, the feeling attached to this card isn't about destruction. It's about realization. It's about looking at a situation and suddenly understanding that it isn't standing still anymore. Something has changed. Something has ended. Something has evolved, and whether they were prepared for it or not, they can feel it. I almost get the image of somebody returning to a familiar place and discovering it doesn't feel the same. The streets are the same. The buildings are the same. The memories are still there, but something about it feels different. That's the energy. Because the version of you that waited, the version of you that kept making room for them, the version of you that kept hoping things would eventually make sense, that version feels further away now. And honestly, I think that's what they're struggling to accept. Not because they believe you're completely gone, not because they know what the future holds, but because they can no longer assume you'll always be exactly where they left you. Ooh, that realization feels heavy, much heavier than I expected, because I'm noticing something here. This person keeps checking the emotional temperature of the connection, almost unconsciously, looking for signs, looking for clues, trying to figure out where they stand, trying to figure out whether there's still a door open somewhere. And every time they can't find a clear answer, it creates more uncertainty. The Four of Swords card is here, and the energy around it feels incredibly quiet. Not cold, not disconnected, just quiet. Like two people standing in separate rooms thinking about the same story from different perspectives. I don't feel chaos here. I don't feel arguments. I don't feel somebody trying to force an outcome. I feel distance creating space for reflection, and reflection can be uncomfortable. Because reflection asks questions. Questions people don't always want to answer. Questions like, why did I take that for granted? Why did I assume they would always understand? Why did I wait so long? And the longer this person sits with those questions, the harder it becomes to ignore what they're feeling. Because Taurus, there's something very different about your energy now. You're not standing in the same emotional place anymore. You're building, growing, focusing, living. And whether this person fully understands it or not, they can sense the gap widening between who you were then and who you're becoming now. That awareness seems to be following them everywhere. And the more they try to understand it, the more another layer of emotion begins to surface beneath everything they've been telling themselves. There's something surprisingly tender underneath all of this, Taurus. Because the deeper I go into this energy, the less it feels like somebody obsessing over what went wrong, and the more it feels like somebody missing how they felt when they were around you. And those are two very different things. You can miss a person, you can miss a relationship, but sometimes what stays with you the longest is the feeling that person brought into your life, the atmosphere they created, the way things felt when they were there. Ooh, the star card is sitting here, and it's giving me this image of someone thinking about you during completely ordinary moments. Not during major life events, not during dramatic situations. I'm talking about those quiet moments when nobody else is around, when they're sitting in the car after work, when they're making coffee in the morning, when they're scrolling through something random and suddenly your name crosses their mind. Because I keep getting this feeling that you brought a certain calmness into their world, not because you solved all their problems, not because everything was perfect between you, but because your energy felt reassuring. There are people who make life louder, and there are people who somehow make life easier to carry. You feel like the second kind. And honestly, I don't think they fully understood that while they were living inside the connection. You know how sometimes you don't notice how comfortable your home is until you're away from it? That's what this feels like. It's the absence of something that reveals its value. And wow, the King of Cups is showing up here. This energy feels emotional, but not in a way that's obvious. This doesn't feel like somebody crying in front of everyone. This feels like somebody carrying emotions privately, holding them together, trying to appear composed, trying to convince themselves they're fine. Yet every so often something slips through, a memory, a song, a familiar place, a conversation that reminds them of you, and suddenly all those feelings they've been trying to organize become much harder to manage. Because I don't think they're only remembering what happened. I think they're remembering how you responded when life got difficult. The way you listened, the way you understood things they didn't always know how to explain, the way you somehow knew when something was wrong even when they weren't talking about it. Honestly, Taurus, that level of emotional safety isn't something people find every day. And the more experiences this person has outside of this connection, the more noticeable that becomes. I keep hearing this strange thought repeating in my head. Nobody does it quite the same way, not better, not worse, just different, and that difference keeps standing out. The Temperance card is here, and it's bringing in a very specific feeling. Balance, not perfection. Balance. Because when I look at this energy, I don't see somebody remembering constant excitement. I see somebody remembering stability, the ability to breathe, the ability to feel understood, the ability to exist without always feeling like they had to perform or protect themselves. And that's where the sadness starts creeping in. Because people often assume they'll find that same feeling somewhere else. They assume it's easy to replace, easy to recreate, easy to rediscover, until they realize every connection has its own atmosphere. Every person brings something unique, and the atmosphere you brought seems to have lingered long after the connection itself changed. Okay, this is getting deeper than I expected, because the Ten of Pentacles is sitting here, and what I'm feeling isn't about money or success. It's about imagining a future. It's about those moments where somebody quietly pictured what life might look like if things had unfolded differently. Maybe they never said it. Maybe they never admitted it. Maybe they barely admitted it to themselves. But there are traces of that energy here. Tiny moments where they saw you as part of something lasting, part of their routine, part of their future, part of the life they were building. And that's why some of these memories seem heavier than others, because they're not only grieving what happened, they're grieving possibilities. The possibilities they never explored, the conversations they never had, the effort they never gave, the chances they assumed would still be there later. You know what keeps standing out? This person doesn't seem angry. Frustrated sometimes, maybe. Confused occasionally. But anger isn't what I'm picking up. What I'm picking up feels closer to longing. Like somebody standing outside a house they used to know by heart and realizing they don't know what's happening inside anymore. And that's uncomfortable. Because uncertainty has a way of making people pay attention. The things they ignored become important. The details they overlooked suddenly matter. The moments they rush through become the moments they replay. And Taurus, the energy feels very reflective here. Not rushed, not chaotic. Almost as if somebody has been sitting with these feelings for longer than they admit. Trying to understand why your absence still carries weight. Trying to understand why certain memories refuse to fade. Trying to understand why peace feels so connected to thoughts of you. And the closer they get to those answers, the more another truth seems to be waiting underneath it all. A truth they may not have been ready to look at before. A strange heaviness starts showing up here, Taurus. Not the kind of heaviness that comes from chaos. Not the kind that comes from conflict. This feels more like emotions that have been sitting untouched for far too long. You know when a room stays closed for years, and the moment somebody finally opens the door, all the air trapped inside rushes out at once? That's what this energy feels like. Because the King of Cups appears again, and honestly, this person keeps trying to hold themselves together. From the outside, they may seem completely fine. They may go to work, talk to people, laugh when they're supposed to laugh, handle responsibilities, keep moving through life. Yet underneath all of that, something deeper has been happening. Something they've been avoiding. Something they've been postponing. And the longer they've postponed it, the louder it seems to become. I keep getting the feeling that this person has spent a long time convincing themselves that certain emotions would eventually disappear if they simply ignored them. That time would take care of everything. That distance would solve everything. That keeping busy would somehow erase what they were feeling. But that's not what happened. Instead, it feels like those emotions settled somewhere beneath the surface. Quiet, hidden, waiting, and wow. The Moon card is creating such an interesting atmosphere around this reading. Because suddenly, everything feels less certain. Not in a frightening way. More in a revealing way. It's like somebody is discovering that they've been telling themselves one story while secretly feeling something completely different. I keep hearing these internal conversations. Little arguments happening inside their own mind. One part of them saying, "It's fine, it's over, just move on." Then another part whispering, "Then why are you still thinking about them? Why do they keep showing up in your thoughts? Why does their absence still feel so noticeable?" And honestly, Taurus, I don't think they've had easy answers for those questions. That's why this energy feels restless. Because some truths can stay hidden for a while, but eventually they start finding ways to surface. A memory appears unexpectedly. A familiar scent reminds them of something. A place triggers an old feeling. A conversation with someone else reminds them of a conversation they once had with you. And little by little, all those pieces begin connecting. The image I'm getting is somebody sitting alone after a long day, staring at nothing in particular. Their mind drifts. Your name enters their thoughts. And instead of pushing it away like they normally would, they linger there for a moment. Then another moment, then another. Because avoidance requires energy, and I feel like they're getting tired. Tired of pretending certain feelings aren't there. Tired of acting unaffected. Tired of carrying around emotions that have never been fully acknowledged. The Eight of Swords card is sitting here, and wow, this feels incredibly personal, because the pressure isn't coming from you. The pressure isn't coming from the outside world. The pressure feels like it's coming from inside their own head. Overthinking, replaying, questioning, second-guessing. It's almost as if they're trapped inside conversations that never happened. Thinking about things they wish they had said. Thinking about moments they wish they had handled differently. Thinking about reactions they wish they could take back. And the difficult part is that these thoughts don't seem to arrive all at once. They arrive gradually, one after another, like waves. Some days are manageable. Other days feel much heavier, because every reflection seems to lead them toward another realization, and another one, and another one. Okay, something just shifted, because the Three of Swords card is here and the feeling attached to it is surprisingly quiet. This isn't loud heartbreak. This isn't dramatic heartbreak. This is the kind that sits in someone's chest when nobody else is looking. The kind people carry privately, the kind they rarely talk about. I almost feel like this person wasn't prepared for how deeply this connection would affect them once the distance became real. Maybe they expected themselves to recover faster. Maybe they thought they would stop caring sooner. Maybe they assumed enough time had passed. Yet every time they think they're past it, another layer seems to appear. And that's where things come difficult. Because they're beginning to recognize that what they're feeling isn't temporary frustration. It isn't simple nostalgia. It isn't boredom. There's genuine emotion underneath it. Emotion they may have tried to minimize. Emotion they may have tried to explain away. Emotion that has remained present, despite all their efforts to move around it. Ooh, this energy is becoming very honest, not necessarily outwardly honest, internally honest. And those are often the hardest conversations to have, because internal honesty doesn't leave much room for excuses. At some point, a person has to stop asking whether they feel something and start asking why they've been so afraid to admit it. And that's exactly where this energy seems to be leading. The thoughts are becoming harder to ignore. The feelings are becoming harder to dismiss. The truth is becoming harder to avoid. And as all of that starts coming closer to the surface, it feels like they're approaching a realization that may change the way they've been looking at this connection altogether. What keeps pulling my attention isn't the emotion itself anymore, Taurus. It's what this person is planning to do about it. Because There comes a point where somebody can only sit with their feelings for so long before something starts shifting inside them. Not because they're suddenly fearless, not because everything becomes clear overnight, but because carrying unspoken words eventually becomes exhausting. And wow, the judgment card is sitting right here. The energy around it feels incredibly personal, almost like somebody standing in front of a mirror they avoided for a very long time. Not looking at you, not looking at anyone else, looking at themselves, looking at the choices they made, looking at the moments they stayed silent, looking at the things they convinced themselves didn't matter, and realizing they matter far more than they wanted to admit. You know what's interesting? This doesn't feel like somebody trying to rewrite history. It doesn't feel like somebody trying to erase mistakes. It feels more like somebody wanting the truth to exist where silence used to exist, because there are certain conversations that stay unfinished for years. Not because people don't care, but because neither side knows how to begin them. And honestly, I think that's where this person has been stuck. Not in the feeling itself, in the expression of it. They've spent so much time living inside their own thoughts that speaking those thoughts out loud almost feels foreign, almost uncomfortable. Like trying to use a muscle that hasn't been used in a very long time. The Ace of Cups card is appearing here, and the atmosphere changes immediately. Something soft enters the reading. Something vulnerable. Not dramatic vulnerability. Not theatrical vulnerability. Real vulnerability. The kind that happens when somebody stops trying to sound impressive, stops trying to sound strong, stops trying to sound unaffected, and simply says what they feel, or at least wants to. Because I keep getting this image of words sitting just beneath the surface. Words that have been rehearsed, rearranged, edited, questioned, and rehearsed all over again. Not because they don't know what they feel, but because what they feel suddenly matters enough that they don't want to say it wrong. Ooh, that's a very different energy. Because earlier, this person seemed focused on understanding their emotions. This feels more focused on communicating them. There's a huge difference between realizing something and expressing it. Realizing something happens internally. Expressing it requires risk. And I think they're becoming more aware of that risk, the possibility of being misunderstood, the possibility of hearing something they don't want to hear, the possibility that too much time has passed, the possibility that life has changed. Yet despite all those fears, I don't feel the thoughts disappearing. If anything, they seem to be becoming more persistent. The Eight of Wands card is creating movement here, not rushed movement, not reckless movement, more like momentum. Like something that has been building quietly for a long time and can no longer remain frozen in place forever. I almost see somebody reaching for their phone, then putting it down, then reaching for it again. Thinking about a message, thinking about a conversation, thinking about what they would say if they had the chance. And honestly, Taurus, I don't even think they're searching for perfect words anymore. Because sometimes people spend so much time trying to craft the perfect conversation that they never have the conversation at all. This feels different. This feels closer to somebody realizing that honesty matters more than perfection. That sincerity matters more than getting every sentence exactly right. And that's where things become interesting. Because sincerity has a way of changing the entire atmosphere. Not controlling it, not guaranteeing anything, just changing it. The Sun card is shining through all of this, and wow, what a completely different feeling. There's relief here. Not because every question has been answered, not because every problem has disappeared, but because hiding becomes exhausting. Pretending becomes exhausting. Carrying emotions nobody knows about becomes exhausting. And the energy around this card feels like somebody getting tired of carrying things alone. Tired of keeping everything locked away. Tired of acting as though certain feelings never existed. I keep hearing this phrase, I just want them to know. Not I need something back. Not I need everything fixed. Just, I want them to know. I want them to know what was real. I want them to know what I couldn't say before. I want them to know they mattered. I want them to know I understand things differently now. And honestly, Taurus, there is something beautiful about that. Not because it guarantees a particular outcome, but because truth has a way of creating space where confusion once lived. Whether that truth is spoken quietly or emotionally, whether it arrives sooner or later, whether it comes through a conversation, a message, or simply a moment of honesty. The energy feels less focused on hiding and more focused on revealing. Less focused on avoidance and more focused on understanding. Because the deeper I sit with these cards, the more it feels like somebody has reached the point where silence is no longer giving them the answers they were hoping for. And when silence stops working, people often find themselves standing in front of the very conversation they've been avoiding all along. And maybe that's where I'll leave this reading, Taurus. Not with an answer, not with a prediction, just with a thought. Sometimes the people who seem the strongest, the most patient, the most dependable, are the very people others assume will never leave. Until one day, life changes, people grow, and the things that once felt guaranteed suddenly become memories someone can't stop thinking about. If this reading found you at the right moment, take what resonates and leave the rest. Thank you for sharing your time and your energy with me today. It truly means more than you know. I appreciate every single one of you, and until next time, take good care of yourselves. Okay, Taurus, bye.